Hi everybody, my name is Sandy Boucher and welcome back to The Learning Curve. As always, I'm excited to do another episode to have you join me here in the studio as we try to build understanding between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people within the city of Thunder Bay and in the region. As always, we share information. So we talk about those topics that maybe you don't quite understand, you're not sure what the kerfuffle's all about. So we share information so that you can use it in your conversations, whether they're at your dinner table or in the boardroom. And today we have a most interesting topic to discuss, as well as an interesting way to present it. Peter Fergus-Moore is my guest today, and you may know him. We're going to learn more about him in a few minutes, but we're going to talk about colonialism. Now that's one of those big $15 words that my mom used to warn about, that people may be a little confused on what that means. So I actually looked up the official definition. So colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. Now, colonialism is a reality in Canada, but that's not the only place you're going to find it. And as always, I'm always fascinated by people who have traveled because it always seems to add to their insight. Peter has a very interesting story to share with us today, and I know I'm going to learn as much from it as I hope you do. So as always, go grab your favorite coffee, tea, whatever, head for that comfy chair, and I'll be back in a few minutes as together we walk through the learning curve. Hi everybody, welcome back to the Learning Curve. Once again, my name is Sandy Boucher and today we're here with Peter Fergus-Moore. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for asking.
Well, are you kidding? When I heard your story and what you were going to share, I was like, oh yeah, okay, you're a guest.
Okay.
You may not know it yet, but you're a guest.
I see.
So as I mentioned before the show, that I always start out, this is about relationships and introducing ourselves to people with different backgrounds. That's how we build those bridges. So I know you because our career paths have crossed in the past, but not like we became best buds or anything. So I love this part because I always learn something new. So are you from Thunder Bay?
No, I'm not. From away, as the Newfoundlanders say.
Oh, are you from
London, Ontario.
Oh, okay. I was just there. I love that city.
Ah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how did someone from London end up in Thunder Bay?
How many hours do we have for the story?
Reader's Digest version here.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I went up to teach elementary school in the Kashechewan First Nation, as it is now known, in James Bay. That was before they moved because of the flooding of the Albany River. After that, I went and taught in Manitoulin Island.
Okay.
And met my first wife there. We married, had children. The marriage eventually broke up. I was living in the Sudbury area, and after the divorce, met my the one who is my second and current wife, and she felt the call to United Church Ministry, which took us to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Wow, okay.
Right, for seminary.
Yep.
And then after that, southeast Manitoba. After that, back into Ontario in Nipigon.
Oh, wow.
From Nipigon to here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's all over the place.
Yeah, it is.
So that's awesome. And you mentioning teaching in the northern communities,
Yes.
my mind literally went to, and now I'm bringing him back for another episode because we're going to expand on that in the future. So you just walked yourself right into that.
Oh, dear.
So now I know what you're going to share, but the audience doesn't.
Fair enough.
So now you ended up traveling. Now, this is because of your wife's work, or did you get involved with the United Church as well?
Well, actually, the short answer to the second one is yes, I already was as a layperson.
Okay.
And when my wife first got what is called a settlement charge, it meant right after seminary, she's ordained, bang, she goes and serves in a pastoral charge, as it's known. A lot of church jargon.
I'm learning
and
so
then
much today.
unexpectedly, we found ourselves, she was pregnant.
Okay.
So anyway, she took maternity leave. And there was really no one in the area who could take over except myself. So I put myself forward and covered her during her mat leave.
Okay.
And that's the United Church involvement. However, I haven't yet explained, but she went on to be a minister. She is now retired.
Okay.
And I was in adult literacy for several years with the
Yes.
Thunder Bay Indigenous Friendship Center.
Indigenous Friendship Center, which is how we met.
Yes, that's
So,
right.
way back when.
Right,
Yeah.
way back when. We are both the same age, my wife and I. Her name is Joyce. And when she retired, I retired, basically.
Okay.
And we were looking for something, particularly after retirement, to bridge between what we had been doing and what was going to come.
Okay.
She felt a call to go to Palestine with the Ecumenical Accompaniment Program in Palestine and Israel. And it's EP is how it's known for short. So if you hear me saying that, I'm not burping or anything.
What does that mean? I couldn't even pronounce it. What was that again?
Ecumenical Accompaniment Program in
Okay.
Palestine and Israel, EAPPI.
Okay.
Now-
Which is, what does that program do?
Well, I was about to say, the United Church of Canada, by the way, is one of the what's called sending churches to this organization, which was created originally at the request of Christian leaders in Jerusalem to provide international observance for people under occupation. Originally
Wow.
Christians, now it's extended to Palestinians across the board. And what happens is that those people who go over act as observers. They see how, for example, Palestinians are treated as they go through checkpoints, of which there are a boatload of them throughout the West Bank. Israeli checkpoints, every single one. As well, they accompany people, that's the accompaniment part.
Okay.
Palestinians going through everyday things like going to a doctor, going to go shop, whatever.
Okay.
And quite often it means going through a checkpoint. Not always, but often.
Okay. Just as this is all new to me.
Sure.
So I hear the words checkpoint. So what is a checkpoint? Is it just someone standing on a street corner, or is it like a crossing the border kind of thing? Like,
Well, the state of Israel has occupied Palestine
Right.
and is increasingly extending its, not just its influence, but its land area as it sees it. So any Palestinian who wants to go to an Israeli-controlled area has to go through a checkpoint.
okay.
And most of the checkpoints are the whole 9 yards. We're talking armed soldiers, guards,
Oh, wow.
metal detectors, documentation stations where you have to show who you are, et cetera, interrogation rooms, you name it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I wasn't over exaggerating, and
Not
that's
at
what I
all.
wanted to clarify, because I had that
Yeah.
image in my mind, and it was like, okay, how accurate is it? And it was accurate. Okay.
As it turns out.
Okay.
So we went over there. It's the World Council of Churches had originally created it. And this is the vests that we wore, which showed we were internationals, we were unarmed, we were with this group of people, and we were just there to watch. Now, there's another aspect to that, and that is create reports based on our observations. Count the number of people who go through the checkpoint, men, women, children, on any given day. Check to see how children are getting to school, if they're getting to school, which is often an issue if you're going through checkpoints. People going to their jobs, this type of thing.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And then there are the incident reports, and that's where something has happened to a Palestinian or Palestinians, usually attacked by, and I emphasize the word attacked by settlers, Israeli settlers, and or the military. And there's a famous case right now where a 16, now 17-year-old Palestinian girl, Ahed Tamimi, was arrested when soldiers were trying to demolish the homes in her village, and she slapped one of them. And the video of that has gone viral. She is now in an Israeli military prison. And
How old is she?
she's now 17. She turned 17 in the prison. Children as young as 5 years old are in Israeli military prisons.
Wow.
Yes, Palestinian
heartbreaking.
children. Yeah. For doing things like, well, you can't expect people to take the occupation and the sort of things that they're subjected to lying down, especially among the young, energetic type people who want to react. The only weapon most of the time they can find is stones. They throw them at the military. The military usually responds with tear gas, arrests, beatings, etc.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This
So,
is-
and you volunteered to do this. This is not a vacation. This is
No, it was not a
serious.
vacation. It was a rupture, is the word I use, between what we used to do and what is going to come afterward. And I'll just mention quickly, the last part of our mandate was to come back home, wherever home was. And these are people from all over the world. And to advocate for a just peace in the Middle East. And that means telling what's really going on as opposed to what the media in general are portraying over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How long were you over there?
3 months. That's the maximum you can stay. Israel controls all entrance and exit points. The maximum visa you can get is 3 months. So if we left and came back in, we could have had another 3. But the, EP organizes teams to stay for their 3 months, and then they bring in a fresh group.
Okay.
And then so on. We were team number 50. They're up to 60 or 65 now.
How many people on a team?
4 to 5, in our case 5. I was in Bethlehem, and in my wife's case there were 4. Yeah, that's about the average.
You mentioned you got to do Christmas in Bethlehem.
Yes.
I thought that was amazing. But that's, I mean, a tiny bright light in what sounds like an incredibly scary journey and a scary 3 months. Like, I mean, did you feel physically safe doing this?
Well, I felt physically safe, and my wife Joyce would corroborate this for herself too. We felt safe around the Palestinians, no
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
And that's whether we were wearing these or not, whether they knew we were internationals, although we kind of, I think, stood out as internationals, no matter what.
Little
But-
cultural differences there.
Yeah. But when, and we were in a relatively, I was in Bethlehem for 2 months, and then East Jerusalem, which is predominantly Palestinian,
Okay.
for a month. Joyce was in East Jerusalem for the whole 3 months.
Okay.
It's customary for them to split married couples. That's normal in the cases of EAs, as we were known.
Okay.
But anyway, when we did checkpoint duty, we were in the presence of people armed to the teeth. And some were soldiers. They have been taught a certain amount of discipline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And some were what we would call rent-a-cops over here. But
Okay.
these rent-a-cops had the equivalent of the AR-15s.
Right?
Oh yeah, like armed to the teeth. And the way they treated Palestinians, they had the whip hand, and they often used it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It never ceases to amaze me what the human spirit can get used to, like what the norm can become.
Yes.
Because I know, and it was nothing compared to your experience, but when I flew to Finland a couple years ago to do a speaking tour, I had to go through Germany. And when you land in Germany, you have to get off the plane and walk through the armed guards
Yep.
into the airport.
Yeah.
So there's these fully armed men with incredibly scary looking weapons.
Yep.
What, touching distance from you. And to me, who had never had that kind of experience, I was like, why are people just walking like this is every day? But it is every day
yeah.
if that's your environment, right?
It is, and I mentioned, I'm going to be talking in a little while here about settlers,
Yeah.
and I'll define that later, but we were in an area where there are very few settlers.
Okay.
If you go south toward Hebron, which is getting down toward the Arabian Gulf, I believe, or the Red Sea, I forget which, then you're starting to talk about settler presence, and some of those settlers were crazy armed as well as fanatical.
Wow.
And they would regularly assault Palestinians in their olive trees, their fields, that type of thing, their homes. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just blown away by your story. I mean, I cannot even imagine. When we come back after the break, there's a method to my madness. You're going to see, we're going to talk about colonialism and the similarities between what Peter knows is going on in Canada and what he saw in Israel and the West Bank. So go refill that coffee and head back to that comfy chair, and we'll see you in a few moments. Hi everybody, once again it's Sandy Boucher and welcome back to the Learning Curve. Today we're here with Peter Fergus-Moore, and he's been telling us about his experience in the West Bank with the Palestinians and the Israelis. So now you just have such a vast experience. I had no idea that you were up in the northern communities. I had known a little bit about your experience in the West Bank, but nothing compared to what you just shared. So, and you're white.
Yep.
In case you didn't
No, I
notice
am.
that looking in the
Yep.
mirror. So
I am a
just
wasp.
had to share with the audience when we were doing the emails, because I always prepare my guests before the show. If you're considering being a future guest, don't worry. We always discuss what we're going to talk about. No surprises. But I had mentioned the term non-racist. And I love your response. I mean, as an Indigenous woman, it just, sometimes I hear something that just gives me so much hope. In your response, I'm going to quote you because I actually wrote it. And it says, "I'm a racist white guy who acknowledges his racism, even if I don't always know the extent of it." That has got to be the most honest thing I've ever heard. Because it's all about unpacking. We're all unpacking, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, looking at what we were taught. Okay, in the logical mind, does that make sense? Looking at privilege, what privileges I have, what privileges I don't. I always point out we don't pick our privilege. I mean, we weren't born and said, I would like this, this, and this. I mean, that got handed to us. So that guilt doesn't need to play into it, but we need to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So you, packed with all your experience and your privilege and whatever came with that, you ended up in the northern communities, you ended up in the West Bank, and you started to see some similarities. You wanted to talk about settlers, you mentioned before the break.
Yes, I did. I'll just say briefly that when we say settlers in the context of the West Bank, the state of Israel is deliberately bringing, first off, they're doing a land grab, massive land grab. And the Palestinian Authority, which is ostensibly the government of the area of Palestine, the West Bank, is so shrunk that its influence is so shrunk that it really is powerless to do anything. It's all Israeli controlled. And they are bringing in basically Jews from around the world, as well as parts of Israel itself, to areas that were Palestinian but are taken over. And they're basically creating colonies known as settlements. Gilo is one, Ma'ale Adumim is another one right outside of Jerusalem. There's dozens and dozens of them, and they're growing all the time. And that is why I say settlers. These people are settlers. Under an international law, an occupying power may not bring, either forcibly or by request, whatever, its own citizens into the occupied territories on any permanent basis. And Israel is flouting international law right, left, and center on this. So what you have, what I saw, I thought that maybe before I went over, I thought something like this was going on. I got there, and yes, that's exactly what's going on. We are simply in Canada and North America about 250 to 300 years down the road from what is now happening in Israel, Palestine.
So basically all these settlers are coming in.
Yep.
I'm going to guess that they're not adopting the customs of the area that they're moving into.
No, not at all.
Okay. So
Yeah.
they're bringing their own culture, their own teachings, their
Yeah.
own traditions,
Yep.
and making it their own,
Yes.
and totally disregarding.
Well,
The
very
people that were
much
there.
so. In fact, the fewer Palestinians in the area, the happier they are, as it were.
Okay, this sounds familiar to a creepy level,
Yes.
right? Like to. Okay.
Very much so. And you
Yeah.
have another parallel is superior weaponry.
Okay.
The Israeli military is the fourth most powerful military on the planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is what anyone who seeks, and I don't think it's a good idea at all, anyone who seeks armed resistance against the Israeli military is simply committing suicide,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's an even scarier thing happening, and among the indigenous folks here, there's a lot of talk about the legacy of the residential schools,
Okay.
which were an attempt to basically de-indigenize, if I may use that term,
Right. Yeah.
indigenous people here, and help them fit into the dominant society as it was seen. The latest move by the Israeli state is to control the education system and to insist on Israeli-created curriculum.
Oh, jeez.
As one Palestinian man put it to me, an activist, he said, "You can take our land, you can take this, you can take that, but if you take our education, our culture, we're destroyed. We're done. There will be no
Always
Palestinians."
go after the kids.
Exactly.
And that's why, I mean, if it's
Exactly.
adult to adult debating philosophies,
Yeah.
way to go, right? You know, all the power to you. But when it's the kids,
That's right.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the Israeli curriculum, I haven't seen it firsthand. I have had it described to me. And basically, the creation of Israel in 1948 is known in the Arab world as the Nakba, the catastrophe. Close to 800,000 Palestinians fled what we now call what was Palestine, thinking that they were going to be murdered by the incoming, what became the Israeli army,
Okay.
the State of Israel. At the time, they were militias, and there were massacres of Palestinians by some of these militias. And these people left, and they thought, well, when things quiet down, refugees are, do this. It's understandable. Displaced folks. When it quiets down, we're going to come back. No. They were denied the right of return, again international law, flouted by what is now the State of Israel. They were denied the right of return to their own homes, their own villages, their own places where they used to be.
Wow.
Yeah, and anyone who tried to come back was shot.
I can imagine when these two come up against each other, that's what we see on the 6 o'clock news
Basically.
every night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you really see, in my opinion, and I will say this unequivocally, is people resisting conquest and being pushed down for it, being murdered, being beaten,
Wow.
being imprisoned.
We threw so much information at you today. So there is a website, you have a blog that
Yeah.
you've shared your experience with. So if anyone's interested in learning more about your experience, so what is the website?
I call it Walking in Bethlehem, all
Okay.
one word,
Yep.
.blogspot.ca.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming out today. It is, I can't even imagine what it was like for you having that experience, because it's eerie for me hearing it.
Could I say one more
Go
last
right ahead.
thing? We were impressed with the incredible patience and what they call sumud, which is kind of like inner strength of the Palestinian people under such huge provocation. And they're not dead yet. And what I see in North America is the same sumud among the indigenous folks, whatever stripe they may be, resisting conquest and resisting colonialism and standing up
Yeah,
for who they are.
thank you.
Kudos to you folks.
Awesome. Miigwech.
Kaigigo.
Please take the information that you heard today and, as always, use it in your conversations. It resonates with me and it gives me so much hope when I see the non-Indigenous trying to understand and more realizing what a challenge it is. I know for all the Indigenous viewers, we're still here, we're still strong, we're still standing up. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, this is Sandy Boucher, and this is The Learning Curve.